Hello, welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. I'm Lauren Hubele, and I am here today interviewing Jyoti Wind. Jyoti, welcome.
Welcome, Lauren. Good morning.
Jyoti, I hear we're going to talk a little bit about some upcoming astrology, and that makes me very excited, particularly revealing what to expect in the month of October. But before we get there, how about if you open up our space?
Thank you. I have an invocation that I wrote for the beginning of a shamanism and astrology class that I taught a year and a half ago. So I'd like to do that to kind of acknowledge the planets before we start. To the planets in the starry night, I ask for your benevolence as we stargazers prepare to make our way among you. Please guide our heart to know you and understand your powers and to receive your blessings.
Thanks, Jyoti. So, what should we be watching for?
So, October has been acknowledged for this year as a meeting of a lot of energies, all at the same time or similar time, but confined to that month of October. And so Pluto is stationing. And when a planet is stationing in the ephemeris, the book of planetary tables, it's the same degree and minute for that time span. And so that energy takes over our day to day experience. And so it becomes the most important factor, no matter what else is going on. And actually, there's several. So the 1st to the 17th of October, Pluto is stationing. And Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio. So whenever Pluto is the same degree and minute, turning direct on the 8th. It's been retrograde for 5 months. So we've been working internally. So after October 8th, it's like those energies move from inside to outside, from internal life to external day to day physical plane reality here. And so that 1st to the 17th, Pluto stationing, we are in a very transformational, deep, intense experience. So transformation is up. We have the opportunity to change things, transform things, and it coincides with Mercury turning direct on October 2nd. As some of you know, Mercury is retrograde right now, and so we're being drawn in, we're being issued this invitation to look deeper inside ourselves, to be self-reflective, meditative. And so Mercury turns direct on October 2nd, and then we begin to work on some of the things that we are seeing or understanding or getting glimpses of right now. And then after October 2nd, it's 3 weeks of catch up. I just call it catching up, you know. So you have that Mercury turning and 3 weeks of catching up. You have Pluto stationing. The first 12 days of October, you have Saturn and the planet Uranus, not exact to the minute, but exact by degree. This is the last pass of this Saturn square Uranus aspect that we've been dancing with over the past while, especially this year, very succinctly. And it's the traditional versus the innovative, the old versus the new. And here we are looking at Britain ending a whole huge cycle of their day to day lives and identifications and understandings. And all of a sudden, here we are with something totally new, because I would think there would be some changes coming down the pike for the Brits. And so the first 12 days of October, this Saturn Uranus is making its last aspect, its last exact aspect, kind of saying, okay, how is that balance going between the old and the new? How is that balance going between these new concepts, new ideas with the tradition and the tried and true? Okay, so all of these are going on that first part of October. So it lends an intensity to our day-to-day lives. And it lends moments of opportunity, maybe not every minute, every day, but it lends moments of opportunity for us to really look at things and really decide what comes with us in this next phase and what is left behind, what is needed to be left behind. Okay.
Jyoti, I think it would be good to reflect a little bit about some practical ways that might feel. So, this is a very intense period. Looking at day-to-day life, what might be different for me?
Well, especially, well, it's just pick one here. Let's say the Pluto. With that Pluto aspect turning direct on the 8th, so the 8th becomes the day that Pluto turns direct, and that would be the most important day of that 1 to 17 of October. So the 8th would be the most powerful day and empowered day for us to step into our power, for us to own our own power. The right use of power is to own it and help everyone else step into theirs and step up to the table if they're able. And so the 8th of October then becomes a very transformative day, collectively, individually. Those phone calls or emails that come in and say, oh, could you do this on the 8th? And you're thinking, oh, that's the day Pluto goes direct. Sure, sure, I'll do it because it's such a powerful day in its own right. You know what I mean? We can't exactly plan. Maybe we can. Some people maybe can. What I want to do on the 8th of October. Maybe I want to leave that day open, just to see what shows up. Maybe I want to commit to something and see how it goes and see how I show up for that, and how I own my own power. But nonetheless, those first 17 days give you an opportunity. It's different for everybody. It's so individualistic. You could decide, okay, I've had enough with all my stuff, and you clean out the basement and the attic and the closets, and you're pulling boxes out that first half of October. And, it's just like I need to lighten the load going forward. I don't need to be carrying all this past stuff with me. Time to just kind of let it go and step. And that aspect of Saturn square the planet Uranus is also that same thing. How do I let go of things that no longer serve me?
Well, those could also look like relationships or jobs.
Yes, could be career change. It all depends on how it
Yeah.
affects each person. But it could be relationship shifts, could be anything from, Pluto is power. It could be abdicating, it could be decision making and merging and deciding, okay, yes, I do want to get married, or yes, I do want to do this business partnership, or just stepping back and going, yeah, this is not for me,
Hmm.
and being really clear about it all of a sudden.
So my takeaway from this, Jyoti, is to just move through our days with more awareness, listening
Yes,
to what wants to come out from us, listening deeper to conversations and what others are saying and asking of us.
yes, yes, yes. And at the same time, because these energies are all happening at the same time, Mercury has gone direct on the 2nd. And so for those 3 weeks after the 2nd into October, into and through October, we're also being perhaps more mindful. more aware,
Okay.
more communicative. We've come out of this 3-week
Um,
retrograde period of looking within, and now we're ready to maybe share and or implement some of the things that we noticed in ourselves. Okay. And so conversation might be much more empowered, might be deeper, hitting some real bottom lines. The Saturn Uranus there is also saying that, it's time to kind of change things up. I mean, if this was an aspect in a person's chart, like I would say to them, it's like a decrystallizing energy. Things get thrown up in the air. Pick the things out the clothes you don't wear for the past 2 years. Let go of the household items you never use, they sit in a cabinet. Let go of the ideas and belief systems that don't serve you any longer.
could they even be letting go of identifiers?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, to an extent, because Pluto's there too. And Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio, is always like a snake shedding its skin, and that includes our identifiers, the stories we tell about ourselves, those kinds of things.
Nice. Sounds like a lot.
It's a
That's
lot.
only, yeah, and it's only halfway through the month.
Well, and and then Mars is squaring Neptune on October 12th, and so it's kind of a catalyst for looking at our spiritual beliefs and what we believe to be true, kind of in the moment, but also in the midst of everything else that's going on around us. And there's an eclipse, which I'll come back to, and then Mars is stationing in Gemini till January. So let's look at the eclipse later in the month. I do want to mention that on October 19th, the sun is squaring Pluto. Now, the sun squares Pluto, every quarter.
Mhm.
It's not such a big deal. It just happens to be falling in and around this whole time frame where there's so much change being offered to us. And so the sun square Pluto asks us to look at where we give our power away and where it's time to reclaim it, okay, and take it back or stand in it. And then Mars entered Gemini. I think it was this month. Mars entered Gemini. No, it was the end of August. The right around the third week of August, Mars entered Gemini and will turn retrograde in Gemini October 30th. It's stationing the 30th, 31st of October, if I have this right. Yes, the 30th. And it will remain in Gemini till January of 23. And that's a long time for Mars to be in a sign from the last week of August until January. I didn't write the date down when it enters. Oh, it's when it goes direct, sorry. So it continues in Gemini until right around March 25th. So it's retrograde from October 30th until roughly the 13th of January of 23. Then it goes direct until the end of March. It's still in Gemini. That's a long time for Mars to be in a sign. And Gemini is about duality, changeability, flexibility. Gemini likes to have different things to focus on. It gets bored if it does the same thing all day, every day. It really needs some kind of diversity. I'll do this in the morning and I'll do that in the afternoon. That's Gemini's dream, and so Mars here is also about language, communication, networking, mentoring, with its placement in Gemini. And so Mars is stirring up the details of things. Okay, Mars is having us look closer in. It's easy in a way sometimes to see the overarching bigger picture, but Mars here wants us to see the details. during this time frame and communicate from that place, not just, oh, this is big and lofty. Oh, look where we're going. How do we get there? Mars in Gemini says, how do we get there? What are the little incremental steps we take in the day to day? Okay, I'm going to make amends in this relationship. I'm going to let go of the boxes of my mother and grandmother's stuff in the basement, that's been sitting there for 10 years, or, those kinds of things. I mean, they might feel big, but you're really tending to some details in your own individual life. So, or that book you've always wanted to write and put together, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you've got enough energy for diversity, for doing a couple things at the same time, and it's like, okay, time. And it's also, you could say, because Gemini is about language and communication, you could also say that Mars in Gemini is about our inner conversation. It's
Mm.
about what we tell ourselves, like that expression, we're the person we talk to the most all day long, and what are we telling ourselves? What are we repeating, or what's the conversation, the inner conversation that we're having?
Mm. This is particularly interesting coming off of the earlier part of the month where there's quite a bit of transformation expected. So it seems like a period of integrating that in some way.
Yes, but I think the integration, yeah, integration. I just wonder if the integration might be more when Mars goes direct
Oh,
in January. Do you know what I mean? Because we're still in the midst of sorting through these
sure.
conversations with ourselves, with other people, and it's kind of like um, the the final results hasn't shown up yet.
Right, right. So it's the experience in the early part of the month. We go inwards, sorting, and then the integration comes later.
Later, yes. I mean, we with Mercury going direct at the beginning of the month, we may have had some insights over this retrograde period that then we want to express, at that then we want to begin to set in motion. Like maybe you realized during the retrograde that there's something you really need to do, and so all of a sudden Mercury goes direct in October, and early October, and it's like, okay, I can set this in motion now. I can form this, I can give it some kind of form, or let people know what I have to offer, or make inroads on something you've been thinking about.
Mm.
Each person will take that in their own life and their own way of looking at something, and do something
Sure,
with it that's for them.
sure, sure.
I always felt astrology was necessarily vague so that you can apply it to your own real life situations.
Yeah. I always find it interesting that when you hear something that's coming up and your mind wants to already decide, oh, this is what that means for me. And then when it shows up in a completely different way in your life. And it's just beautiful.
Yes, yes. Or there might be a thread of something in there. There might be a thread, like with this Pluto stationing the first um, uh, almost 3 weeks of October. Um, I can say, oh, you might be looking at your own sense of empowerment and what you do with that. And so maybe one day you have a success, or you're talking to your mother-in-law and all of a sudden you say what you really mean. You know what I mean? I
Right.
mean, it can show up in so many different ways. And so that sense of empowerment, you with your kids, a person, a mom with their kids, and all of a sudden she goes, that's it, I've had enough, let's do this differently. you
Mhm.
know I mean, so empowerment looks many different ways. Yes.
Sure. Sure. So I hesitate to say this, because this is a lot. But is that all that we should expect in October, or is there more?
There's one more thing.
Yes, of course there is.
So there's an eclipse on the 25th of October. And yes, eclipses, when they occur, their result or what they're sparking and triggering and setting in motion usually shows up 3 months later, 3 to 6 months later. So that takes us away from October, but the eclipse is in October on the 25th.
Sure.
And so it's a new moon eclipse, which talks about a new cycle, and it's the sun, moon, and Venus together. And so it's about depth. Like if I wanted to wax poetic, I could say, because Venus is there, it's like the beauty of death and or transformation. It's very creative. It could be a new cycle and some type of creative endeavor, and acknowledging beauty inside, outside. And it also is a new cycle of being willing to look deep because it's Scorpio, being willing to make changes in the life, depending on where that eclipse hits in a person's chart. And but generally speaking, for everyone, it is an opportunity to maybe really appreciate the beauty of the earth, maybe really appreciate beauty in whatever form it takes around you. Just walking outside and smelling a flower or seeing mountains or ocean or prairies or whatever, and just really appreciating what's been given to us, you know. And Venus a lot of times heralds change. It's more subtle than the planet Uranus and Pluto, and Mars. It's more subtle, it's more refined. And this is a refining of how we see ourselves potentially. And so it's a new moon, a new cycle of depth.
And you're saying depth as in deep, not depth.
Well, I think I did say death at one point, but I am saying depth right now.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, beautiful. Anything else?
Uh, I really think that's enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the year we can cover another time, especially going into 2023. But that's October. October is packed.
So, folks, you have 2 weeks. I suggest resting up with this Mercury retrograde.
Yes,
Enjoy your inner time, um,
yes, yes.
and be ready.
Yes. And, it's subtle. Sometimes you think, well, it's going to be majorly impactful, but sometimes it kind of just builds subtly. And then all of a sudden one day you go, yeah, I need to make some changes. I need to call a therapist or, you know, do something to change it up. I want my life to change, then I need to change it. I need to take those steps.
Yeah, lovely. Jyoti, so many insights. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So, I'd like to give a little plug because you have a new course coming up on this theme. What can you tell us?
I'm planning to do a beginning astrology course, 6 weeks. I haven't set a date yet. I want to start it in October, and I'm still looking at when I want to set that in motion. Probably mid to the third week of October into November. It would be a weekly class. I haven't picked the date and the time yet. I'm still looking at that. But a beginning course, it covers signs, planets, 2 classes on the houses, and 2 classes on aspects.
Well, it sounds like an ideal time for folks to step into something new and explore something they've always been interested in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Yes.
this information will be up on your website, which is what?
JyotiWindAstrology.com.
Okay, and you all can find that in the show notes for this episode. Wonderful. great opportunities here. I think you've got a lot to look forward to in October. And Jyoti, thank you again for your time.
Oh, you're so welcome, Lauren. Thank you.